We got to hit it off with Kobe.
Yeah.
It's too important not to.
Yeah. So we're just going to start off right now. So
let's do it.
Yeah, Danny, I wanted you on.
Thank you.
For a long time. I know Kenny got the first bit of you.
Yeah.
And was able to kind of put you on the spotlight, which is awesome. But this is now it's 2020, new setup,
new year,
new mics.
I love it, man. Honestly, this setup, Omid, is incredible. I'm so proud of you and Kenny. Like, just looking at the backdrop and then walking in here today to see it for the first time in real life. Man, I'm so proud of you guys.
I was surprised that you hadn't seen it yet because obviously we've done a couple episodes, but I was surprised you hadn't peeked in when.
Yeah, I was just telling you right before the podcast started. I was here yesterday. I spent the night here. I was on the other side of these doors, but I'm like, I can't open up those doors until it's my turn to sit on the seat. So I allowed it to be, and man, this is just. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love it, man.
You guys are definitely the premier podcast here.
Thank you. That's what we're trying to be.
As a longtime fan of podcasts, especially like, you got Joe Rogan, you got TED Radio Hour. There's so many great podcasts. And to see you guys on that upper echelon level is it's next level. So
thank you, bro.
It's wicked.
We're trying to do our best with this, right? We're trying to take it to the next level, take it to the second floor, as the whole metaphor, the analogy of this entire podcast is.
I think you're on the 100th floor, dog.
That's the second floor.
I told you guys a minute ago, I'm like, you got to rename this shit to like floor 3.
Floor 3.
Like each
every
episode.
Year, just keep going. Just keep rebranding.
Bro, you guys are like a skyscraper at this point, man. You guys are killing it. So I love the dedication. And just to see the evolution of the podcast, full circle, my first episode released today.
Yeah.
Now I'm on the pod for the second time.
Yeah.
Me and Kenny did that episode like 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And we're on the balcony. We're like, yo, how's the setup? It was all nerve wracking. I'm like, is the setup? I was just happy to be there. Yeah. But being here now, it really it shows what hard work does. Yeah. Discipline. And yeah, man, you guys are killing it.
Thank you, bro. And speaking of discipline and hard work and taking stuff to the next level, are one of my icons, one of my favorite people in the world, obviously passed away yesterday in a tragic crash, and that's Kobe. And I know for a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this they were super in love with the guy. I want to speak on it a little bit just because I feel like the guy as an entire character, not just basketball, but just like the way what he brought to the game and the way he kind of carried himself was just like transcendent. It was something that was, to me, was more so fulfilling to watch versus just the basketball side of things.
Yeah.
Seeing his interviews, seeing his documentaries, certain traits that I really wanted to emulate in my own life. I'm sure it was like so many people wanted to. Yeah, man. What are your thoughts on just the guy? I don't know how close you felt about this icon.
Absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
It's even hard to talk about now. I mean, I found out yesterday. And I was in absolute shock initially. I didn't know how to feel.
Yeah.
I was at the gym. I was with KB. He was about to spar. I got the news a couple minutes after it was released, and I had to verify the news 2 or 3 times. And KB's getting ready for the most important fight of his life. He's sparring. His coaches are there. His training partners are there. And I'm like, this guy kind of felt like alone for a couple of seconds there. And I said, KB, I just couldn't handle. It was unbearable.
Yeah.
Right? I could not believe it. And I showed it to him. And then the whole gym kind of found out around the basis of me showing KB, and then people kind of gathered around and everybody was in a state of shock. Sparring proceeded. That was a minor distraction for something that was massive. That was kind of a buffer point before I really understood what happened. Yeah. And we jumped in the car, and I kind of felt shocked still. And then I drove home, and that's when it hit me.
Yeah.
I really thought about what Kobe meant for me. Of course, I didn't know him personally, but being a massive basketball fan growing up, and seeing him torch the Raptors and seeing him just absolutely dominate the league for so many years. And just to see his personality, his discipline, his hard work, his leadership, it transcended sports. He was one of those guys where you didn't have to know basketball. You didn't have to know what a foul was. You didn't have to know what a free throw was. But guess what? You knew what Kobe was.
Facts.
Right?
Yeah.
So he was on that level of Michael Jordan. He was on that level of being untouchable.
Yeah.
And I was really choked up. He was a guy that I drawn an unbelievable amount of inspiration from in my own endeavors with athletic endeavors, I guess you can call it, with boxing, with hockey. It didn't have to be basketball. It had to be the discipline. It had to be the principle behind succeeding. And I looked up to him for a long time.
Yeah.
And I still do. And just hearing the devastating news that not just him, but his daughter and nine people that ended up dying that were mothers, brothers, sisters, daughters, sons. I just it was a tough one to swallow.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. I felt the exact same way, bro. I was actually playing basketball, and funny enough, I hit 4 game winners. Wow. In the scrimmage, the scrimmages against the 2 teams we play every Sunday, just a practice runs.
Feeling
on
like
Sundays.
Kobe.
Felt like, and it was so weird. I told Raj, I told Karam, I was like, after we found out midway through, one of the guys was on his phone, and this guy doesn't really joke around about things like that. So at first I was in straight denial. I was like, nah, man, why you got to ruin the mood? Haha. I was just kind of playing it off.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to believe it. I was like, oh, I hope this is some TMZ fake, something that someone's hyping up, that it wasn't real. And then as they started looking into it, more and more news outlets, people started, going on Instagram and whatever. And it didn't really hit me. It was like, okay, I'll just continue playing and finish up my workout. Mm-hmm. And then once I finished and I went, I had about an hour and I went and got a coffee. And that's when I went on my phone and I got emotional in that cafe. I was tearing up. Yeah, just and like you said, we don't know the guy personally, but just we've grown up to see this kid evolve and transcend the game that we love.
Yeah.
And just absolutely dominate for so many years. And you can't really. It's kind of weird because you don't. A guy that you idolize, a guy that you see as the pinnacle of success and the pinnacle of leadership and domination and just killing it in life and having a beautiful family and then post basketball, killing it, being an investor, being a writer, a producer, and just taking that character that he had and then tragically passing away. It was just it just didn't make sense because you never want to see a guy like that, a guy that you love so much, just tragically go away like that in your life. You always you always have this picture of this person.
Yeah.
Right? So, but you can just tell and look at the impacts he's had. People that don't know basketball, our friends, our inner circles that don't know basketball that well, they feel it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that.
And just to think about the level of dominance that he just continually developed and just put into the game of basketball and outside of basketball, you kind of felt like he was untouchable. A part of me felt like, not Kobe. Anybody else, but it can't be Kobe.
Yeah.
And so it put it into a really harsh perspective for me that, and we're reminded of death all the time, right? It's just, it's something that happens. Icons die. Most important people in your life die. People pass away. We know that. You live, you die, people move on. But it just didn't feel like Kobe could ever die.
Yeah.
I don't think Kobe will die, but physically he's left. He's still here. He's still in people's hearts. And it really put it in perspective that no matter how untouchable you are, nobody's really untouchable. And that's where it really it hurt. It just hurt so much. And I related it back to my life. And I just told, people in my inner circle, I express my love for my family. And it gets to a point where we don't do that enough because, 41 years old, 14 years old, and I know there's some adolescents, there's some teenagers on the helicopter as well that lost their lives. And it could all end way too early, So it's really important to, don't leave anything behind. If you have to say it now. Say it when you have a chance, because we move on and we live life. Sometimes we don't live it day by day. We think about next week. We think about next year. We think about where we want to be, where we have to be, where we expect ourselves to be, where society expects us to be. But we're not truly in the moment. And we think, I'll tell that person I love, I'll tell him next week. I'll tell him later. Do it now, because you might not get that chance.
Yeah, it's so true, bro. And the one thing that I, really take away, and a lot of guys that were posting on their Instagram, is this is exactly why I do the podcast. This is exactly why I do the music stuff, and I try to grind as much as I can on the weekends, because I don't know if I'm going to live tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I don't want to live with that regret of like, you know what, when I wanted to start that podcast, I didn't.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, I wanted to make a hip hop track, a rap track. I could give a fuck about what people think of me.
Yeah.
I want to do what I think and feel, and without feeling like, without feeling fear, or without feeling like, oh man, the people judging, or whatever the case, whatever scenario is. I don't want to leave the things that I want to do for a time when I might not have that chance.
Yeah.
I might, get into an accident, or I might get into something where I might not be able to sit and have this conversation with you, with someone that I respect and someone that I wanted to have a conversation with. Or like you said, I tell my mom, my parents, every night when I'm home, I always tell them I love them.
Yeah.
Morning and night, always. Just one of those things where when I leave, I tell them that.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't keep death in my head like nobody keeps death in their head every day. Like, oh yeah, you might die, so do these things. But no, it's just a reminder of like, like you can't wait for that like right moment of doing certain things. It's just a matter of like doing it as much as you can and doing it right now.
Yeah. And you know what? No matter what materialistic items you may have, and the amount of money you have in your bank, and the amount of success and influence and power you've generated with your endeavors in your life and the activities that you've explored, everything's so fragile. It really doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. So the connection, the long-lasting memories, you sitting here and having the cameras on us.
Yeah.
Well, we get to have this conversation. These are the things that ultimately last. And it's amazing that you guys are doing the podcast and giving people a platform.
Yeah. Because
I've heard so many amazing stories from people that probably wouldn't have been heard on this podcast. And if it wasn't for this podcast, people have, they wouldn't have learned those lessons. They wouldn't have learned from the mistakes of others. They wouldn't get a perspective into people's lives that live maybe a kilometer away from them here in Edmonton. So it really illuminates, and it really shows the amount of amazing people that are within your 25 kilometer radius. Yeah. You've got to find them. You've got to seek them out. And, just because, there's role models everywhere, right? But you want to find the people that you can talk to physically, you can reach out to. And Kobe touched all of us in a way that I'm sure nobody ever has. He was like that tantalizing figure, that tenacious competitor that really grinded and got to where he wanted to be. He wasn't a first overall pick.
He was 13th.
13th overall, right?
Yeah.
You didn't expect him to be the greatest player of all time. And he's in that conversation now.
Yeah.
Officially. And he's been there. During his career, people were looking at that. The man had ruptured his Achilles. One of the most devastating and painful injuries that a basketball or athlete can go through. And what did he do? He took that free throw and he hit it. And then, after that, he recovered for a full year. Just that attitude. After winning 5 championships, he decided to take that free throw, right? And it just showed that it was greater than him. Despite how painful that might have been, mentally and physically, knowing that you ruptured your Achilles and knowing probably in that moment that I'm not going to be playing basketball, for the next year. He had a straight face. He took that free throw. Yeah. He hit that free throw. And then he didn't even grimace. He got off the court and moved on. And that was his personality. That was a defining moment in my relationship with Kobe from like an outside view.
Yeah.
I gained like a complete new appreciation and respect for him, because it was frustrating. All those years he was torching the Raps.
Yeah.
He dropped 81. I was a kid when that happened. I remember watching that game like, you guys are going to let this happen? You guys are going to let this happen?
Yeah.
This guy's going to do this to you? But just absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
So, and he lived such a prosperous and amazing life in 41 years and showed you what you can accomplish. Even if you accomplish a fraction of what he did, that's a life worth living.
Facts.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be in athletics or in the NBA. That could just be in whatever you do. Mm-hmm. If you're a teacher, show that passion. Show up to work every day knowing that you're going to make a difference in somebody's life. And that's what he'd done.
Yeah.
And that's what I've taken from Kobe from these years.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, it's fun to be the best. It really is. You're a competitive guy. I really appreciated that from him, but keep growing, keep teaching, stay passionate. Yeah. Is what I really took from Kobe all these years.
Yeah, I took the exact same thing. I think more so I took the fact of I want to grind harder for the things that I want. Yeah. And I know, like, again, this life, you leave everything. There really is nothing left when you're gone. You don't take anything with you. But that doesn't mean not to do anything. Yeah. It means to go harder, grow, make connections, be with the people you love, take risks, do the things that you want to do. I do the things, I grind so much, but on the things that I love. So it doesn't feel like I might spend 14, 15 hours on something, especially with this video stuff and music and all this, the podcasting. It's a lot of work on the back end of things, but I'm not sitting there complaining about it. It's tough, but yeah. I always think about, okay, like this is what I love and this is what I want to make happen. Yeah. If I can make this a full-time thing or make it into something that's bigger than me and that could be a platform for other people, and it could even make the difference of one person just by listening to conversations, then I feel like I've done, something. Yeah. And I don't want to leave this life not having made a mark in human society and for the human race. Yeah. I don't want to be just doing it for me. I want to be able to give back somehow. And right now the podcast is something I can do, and it's a start. And, I feel like there's so much more that I want to give and do, not only for myself, but again, for others, that I now I look at this and I'm like, man, like, yeah, you don't know. Tomorrow could be your last day. Like, fucking go. Yeah. Fucking do. Every day do something that you love or that makes you happy. Tell the people in your life that you appreciate them, that you love them, that you care for them, that you're there for them. And like you said, I don't think we do that enough. Even with our own things, we think that we have that next day. I can go to the gym next week. I can start that podcast tomorrow. I'll make a plan. I'll make a plan. The New Year's resolutions, right? And
yeah, the beauty is in the grind.
The beauty's in the grind, man. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And you have to, and it's hard to see it if you don't love what you're doing. That's the hardest thing to see. Yeah. And feel.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, they try to find their passion. They never find it. You've got to learn to love what you do. I don't care if you're a janitor. You've got to find the enjoyable moments of doing what you do. You've got to love that. And if you don't, you can't find that, you've got to find something else. And it doesn't have to be something that you think you'll love. It has something, you have to get good at things before you can really enjoy them. And I've learned that with plenty of things in my life, primarily with sports. You know, when I first started boxing, I loved watching boxing. I fell in love with it really quickly. But did I like getting hit? I hated it. Did I like getting humiliated and beat up? I hated it. But I had to do it to get better. And then it got to a point where I was good enough to hold my own and not get hit. And I was elusive and I was good. And that's where the enjoyable nature of doing something you're good at, that's where it becomes fun. That's where it really becomes fun. And it's weird because I'm in that stage now with jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like I've been doing it for 10 months now. And, man, it's been an absolute blast knowing from what I've learned from different activities and different experiences in my life that enjoy the time you're not good at something, because that's when you learn the fastest. That's when you have like this period of exponential growth where you learn so quickly, you learn so much, but you don't appreciate it because you get your ass kicked every day because people are better than you. But if you learn to be humble and humble yourself and not want to get to the finish line before you're ready to get there, that's where it's the funnest. And that's where I've really started to enjoy learning things. You know, at work, some days are not fun, right? But for me, if I can learn something from work that day, then it's a win. If it's a 5% win, it's a 5% win. If it's a 1% win, guess what? It's a W. Yeah. I'll still bank that W and move on to the next day. Sometimes you lose too, but it's a W too. Just make sure you get more W's than L's, right? So it's funny that you brought up that point. I kind of skipped my mind now, actually, but what was it? What were you thinking? Okay, so you were talking about essentially when you're kind of in the space of learning something, right? When you're in the space of doing something and grinding because you love it, right? You get to a place where sometimes you're in the rat race. Sometimes you're in it for the wrong reason, right? So it's cool to see that you continually do something that you love and it's changed to a platform like this, right? Yeah. Like you're at a different level now than what it was. And so I hope you had the kind of the appreciation for what you guys set up here.
I do. You brought up a great point of finding fulfillment in the thing that you learn and you get a little bit good at. And I think just from my experience, I felt the exact same way. Is, you know, a lot of people don't get to the point where they can start something and then afterwards find fulfillment once they get even somewhat good at it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because that learning curve at the beginning, like you said, when you were getting hit during your first times boxing, that's not fun.
Fucking
like, fuck
it.
that. I don't want to do that.
I went home crying sometimes.
Yeah. Like at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to do this. I tried it, whatever.
I hated it.
And a lot of people, that's the thing, bro, is a lot of people don't get past that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the idea is to get past that point.
Yeah.
And to get to a point where, oh shit, like I can do something in this and see, because the fulfillment is in the growth. Yeah. It really is. Mm-hmm. Even with this podcast, right? I found that I did a lot of experimentation during my undergrad with this video stuff. I've done every video you can think of. I've done vlogs. I've done comedic skits.
You've done Barnos?
What's that?
Barnos?
Oh, I was like, what? I was like, I said Barnos.
He's like, motherfucker, this is a business podcast. This is not a porn podcast. This is not a fucking...
Okay, other than that, I've done literally every.
You set
video.
yourself up for that. Come on.
I know. That's funny, bro. No, but like I've had those years to experiment. Yeah. And I didn't take it to a point where I could actually see any growth or fulfillment from it. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while, but it took me a couple years to realize, man, like, if I want to make this content stuff and I really want to be good at it, I have to be consistent, but I have to stay in the game long enough to see fulfillment, to feel fulfillment. Yeah. Because after a couple months of doing it, it's work.
It's work.
It's fucking work.
Shitty.
Yeah.
It's a grind.
It's a grind. Yeah. And the opportunities aren't there. Yeah. You have no opportunity. No one's watching you. No one's giving you that pat on the back. Nobody's liking your shit.
Nobody's gonna accelerate your
Nobody
career
cares.
to the CEO level.
Yeah.
You gotta work. You have to demand that. You have to get there yourself.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And that's where I found like, okay, when I start this podcast, and if it goes well with Kenny, that I am for minimum 1 year, once a week, we're gonna drop every week we're gonna drop something new, no matter what, no matter how busy I get, no matter if it feels like shit. And I'll tell you, bro, and you can ask this, you can talk to Kenny about this. There were days where I spent all day, my Sunday, full Sunday from 8 in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, shooting and editing.
Yeah.
By myself. No Kenny there, no Yusuf there. And I was so frustrated because the next day I had a long day at work.
Yeah.
Monday, starting of the week.
Yeah.
That I messaged them. I was like, yo, like, if you guys are really serious about this, y'all have to be here with me. If not with me, you got to be doing something for the pod.
You got to allocate that work.
Yeah, allocate it. And it was a frustrating feeling, but I still was there those Sundays.
Yeah.
Those Saturdays, evenings, weekends, I'm still there no matter what happened. And now we're starting to see some like physical manifestations of like opportunities that are coming our way.
Yeah.
After a year and a half of grinding to make this into what it is. And I'm not saying we've made it.
Yeah.
But it was consistent. And that's what I take up from 2019 was I was consistent with 80% of the shit that I was doing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I'm like super proud of myself. Like holding on, not being carried away from, oh man, this is too difficult. Like, like it's a Sunday. It's a Friday night and I want to chill with the boys.
Yeah.
You know, fucking, I'm gonna stay in and get this shit done.
Yeah. That's, you know, I remember having conversations with you and Kenny about the allocation of how many hours you put behind the scenes, you know, and I didn't really have a full understanding of how much work a podcast takes. You know, people see the product, they think, oh, there's a mic, there's 2 cameras, there's a light, you hit play, and there's 45 minutes of recording, and then you go home. It's not like that. And you guys really showed me that. And it was, I had that conversation with Kenny. I had that conversation with you. And then I spoke to both you guys about it. And now that you guys have you're working more in conjunction with one another, I mean, it's taking you guys to places that I'm sure you probably didn't imagine you'd be at last year, you know? And
100%.
And I think this is the beginning. This is kind of where it starts. This is where the fun starts happening, right? Like there's still plenty of work, but now you're good at what you do. Kenny's good at what he does. I've seen the growth between you guys. Yeah. Even individually, like, holy man, you guys know how to hold a conversation. Yeah. And I see that outside of the podcast when we're just, you know, all hanging out with bros and just doing our own thing, and we're all having good conversations with one another. Like shit, I'm like, this should be a podcast, guys, right? Yeah. And I see the growth that it's kind of you guys have all individually grown so much. And it's funny that you say how long it's taken you to get to this point with the videography. And I look at somebody like Karam, and I know how many people hit up Karam being like, "Hey, show me how to edit." Right? And it's like, have you seen the man's skills? You can't teach that. Yeah, you got to teach yourself that. I mean, you might, if you want to work on it, you might be able to get some hints, you know, some tricks here and there. You might be able to put something up your sleeve, but that's a master at work. Yeah. Right?
Shout out to the boy.
Shout out to the boy. Like, you're not going to just play some goddamn fucking rec hockey and then show up to Connor McDavid's door and be like, bitch, let's go to the ODR. Like, let's see what you got. That's not going to happen. Facts. Right? Like, it takes time. It takes persistence. It takes grinding. And what I love about our friend group is, man, everybody grinds. Yeah. Everybody grinds in their respective discipline, in their industry, in their work, and everybody's creative at it. Yeah. It's not like it's like, hey, I'm going to work today and it's 9 to 5 and I'm fucking depressed and I'm going to be this. I hate the word. I hate the phrase. Yeah. Same shit, different day. Yeah. If you say that, fuck off. Like, learn about yourself. Go do something different. Same shit, different day. It's like, how many days do you have in a lifetime? You know, how many days do you have in a year? As cliche as that sounds, right? But seeing everybody get better at what they do, get better quickly as we get older. It's special.
It is.
It's special, and it's fun to sit down in retrospect and look at the growth. Seeing my boy KB light up the show. Seeing where he was at last year when, we were putting those hours in to where he's at now. Last year, I'm like, oh, man, KB, you're gonna be a champion. I've known that for a long time. You're going to be a UFC champion. And just last year to the guy he is today, like KB today would fuck up KB last year.
Facts.
I didn't think that was possible, right? You today would out edit you last year by a mile. Oh, yeah. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. I remember the first podcast I watched on the second floor, and I think there's 4 of you guys with KB.
Oh yeah.
So it's Yusuf, you, Kenny, KB, and I'm like, this is dope. I was super excited. I'm like, whoa, the boys are doing a podcast. I can't wait to be featured. Yeah. And you guys were kind of like on a bench table. Right? I was like, it's kind of a bummy setup, but they're killing it. It's about the conversation.
Yeah.
And now the conversations are better. The people you have are better.
Yeah.
So it's just a trajectory of going upwards. Yeah. And it's cool. It's fun to see. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What was your favorite Kobe memory? I was meaning to ask you that.
Favorite Kobe memory? Damn, that's tough, man.
He's had like 500, but
I think again, this is probably a lot of people's favorite, but definitely the last game. Because I remember watching it fully. Actually, maybe the last game, and then there was another memory when the Celtics and the Lakers played in 2008.
Yeah.
I was at Toddy's place, and Toddy at the time, this was years ago, Toddy lived with 3 other guys.
Yeah.
And all those other 3 guys were all Celtics fans.
Oh, they were with Kevin Garnett.
They were with the Garnett, the big 3, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him inviting me to watch the final game.
You wore that jersey.
I wore this jersey in a sea of Celtic fans.
Damn.
Right? In this living room, there was probably like 10 or 15 people, all wearing Celtic green.
Yeah.
Including Toddy, because Toddy's favorite player is Kevin Garnett.
Oh, okay. And
I was getting beaked so hard during the game watching it, and I'm like, it's all good. My guy Kobe's gonna come in.
Yeah.
Like y'all watch, we're gonna win this. And it was the very last game of that series, and they won. And I remember Kobe, jumping up and down. And I remember jumping up and down, screaming in that living room. And I was young, man. Like I was young, and Toddy's a little older than me, and his friend group's a little older. So I remember just having this satisfaction, like as though I won the championship, as though I was in that game.
Yeah.
Right. So that was probably that was one of my favorite moments, if not the favorite moment. And then the last game.
That's
what
awesome.
About you?
There are so many moments. I mean, the Shaq days. I was young. I was old enough to understand greatness. I was kind of like, whoa, these guys are crazy, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of my first perspective of basketball.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you say that, because just recently I just finished the Michael Jordan autobiography. Great book. It was an amazing book. KB lent it out to me. It's a phenomenal book. And near the end of it, it was kind of they're talking about the passing of the torch. From one generational talent to the next. And I believe it was in 1998. Actually, it was Kobe's rookie year. It might have been, 96 or 97?
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was 96. And Kobe was like this young phenom, and he really took the league by storm. Like initially, I don't think he played too much initially when he was on the Lakers as a rookie, but as soon as he got that playing time, he took advantage of it, and he started torching guys. And so you have Michael Jordan on the latter stage of his career. And I'm not old enough to remember this, right? This is from me reading about it and then going watching the video and watching the game on YouTube right after, because I felt like, holy, this is crazy. It's probably a month ago. So what had happened is Kobe is this young phenom, and he's taking all of MJ's moves. And MJ notices, right? He's a very attentive person, especially in his competitive nature, right? He really wants to know your game plan, and then he wants to dismantle your game plan. So he goes into that matchup with Kobe knowing that this young buck right here is taking all my moves. But Jordan mentions it, and he has like this great saying, something along the lines of, the reporter asks him, "Are you upset that Kobe's taking your moves?" And he says, "Absolutely not." He's like, "If it works, I'm happy he got them, and I want him to be better than I am at my moves." And so that showdown was incredible. So I think MJ finishes with 31 points, Kobe with like 28, and they're going tit for tat. Kobe comes down the lane, posts up, low post, and then he does a pivot fadeaway. That's MJ's move. MJ comes back at him. MJ does the same thing. Kobe comes back with another MJ move, but does it better on MJ and then scores on him. And then MJ's like, he's got it. This is the one. And I think from that moment on, it was kind of solidified, the passing of the torch. Yeah, and just reading about that,
that's crazy.
My mind was blown, because this is, near the end of Michael Jordan's career, and it touched upon Michael Jordan's life, and how competitive he was, and how he was willing to pass that torch to greatness.
And it's so cool to see that over the years how close they've gotten too, because they always get interviewed here and there separately. And Michael Jordan always says, like, Kobe's like the little brother that I never had. He's like my little brother, and like, apparently, like, again, what he said, like, they've had many, many private conversations, and they've grown to have this like friendship, and it's so cool to see two GOATs just having such a beautiful bond where everybody wants to be like, oh, like, what do you think of, like you said, oh, are you mad that Kobe did this? Are you mad that, or, whatever the case, and like try to like separate them. But in reality, like, you look at LeBron too, and the relationship he had with Kobe.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and expressing it online, and expressing it very much so during games, after games.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see, like, guys like giving each other that level of respect, and not only that, but just being friends.
Yeah.
At that level.
It's crazy to think LeBron, how he made the move to LA, right?
Yeah.
Like, one might think, are you trying to live in the shadow of the greats? Like, are you trying to live under Magic Johnson and then Kobe? Johnson's back like before our days, right?
Yeah.
So that memory for us it's not really there. So it kind of means less. I'm not taking away from what he did, because obviously he was phenomenal, but we weren't there to experience that. Whereas Kobe, we were there to experience that. And so somebody like LeBron saying, I'm going to leave the Cavs, I'm going to LA. That's where I'm playing. It just shows the level of respect that the GOATs have with one another. And it was so touching, because on Saturday, LeBron passes Kobe for 3rd overall in points in the NBA history. And on his shoe, he has Mamba for life. And after the game, he says, he just talks about his respect and his love and his appreciation and how he looks up to Kobe. And that's kind of another example of how the torch was passed. Yeah. And how it was completely rightfully so done, and how wholesome it was. And it's what you live for, man, that camaraderie between people who are at the top of what they do. And it shows people that just because we're at the top, or even if we're fighting to be at the top, I don't have to dislike you. I can learn from you. You can learn from me. And then we can kind of move up the ladder together. And so that's a great example and a great lesson that these GOATs have taught.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a true example of what leadership is. Like, leadership is like having everybody win, in their own respective ways. Like, there's enough bread for everyone.
Yeah, there is.
Everyone can win.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what, in a basketball sense, those guys show it professionally, on and off the court.
Yeah.
They showcase that, and what they do off the court means just as much as what they do on the court.
Yeah.
Right?
Even more so.
Because,
right? Like, you can win from those situations, but, there's going to be a loser in sports.
Yeah.
But, like, can you transcend that loss? Right? And that's what it comes down to. I mean, if you lose in life, you can't hold that against somebody who maybe beat you, right? You gotta see how you lost, and you gotta try to get the W next time.
That's the thing. Like, people don't, like, a lot of people, not a lot, I would say that's being able to give your opponent respect.
Yeah.
In the same realm, in the same field as you.
Yeah.
And being like, you know what? Like, I respect what you do. I respect you. And yeah, you might have beaten me this time, but next time I got you. You know what I mean? But it's in a way where it's not toxic. It's in a way where you're elevating everybody around you, and you're not speaking bad about them, right? Like it could have been easily done. Like those guys could easily talk shit about each other. Like,
100%.
Oh, what do you think? You know,
for like their own legacy.
For their own legacy, right?
Who is the greatest?
Who's the number one? Right?
None of them
do that.
Though.
They
None of them
never
do
say.
that.
They never talk shit about each other.
They don't know.
Right, and that's something that a lot of people don't take notice. Is like a lot of people will talk shit about all these guys.
Yeah.
But then they never talk shit about each other. In fact, they always compliment.
Yeah.
They take the opposite route.
Yeah.
But everybody wants that. And be like, oh man, talk shit about. Like they love that.
There's space for it. That's why I love fighting. That's why I love like the bravado and the entertainment aspect of all sports.
Yeah.
But I love fighting because
I think
it's so
fighting,
natural.
There's an element to it, right?
You don't need to talk shit because we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
I don't have to say a word to you. You've said enough to me.
Yeah.
But if I say a million different things for like, you know, the common listener, of course they're gonna tune in and they're gonna have fun. You got the Conor McGregors, you have the
But I feel like in a sport like fighting, right? In the sport of like UFC, MMA, that's now part of the culture, right?
Yeah.
People live for that kind of like, what is he gonna say? What's McGregor gonna say?
It's always respect afterwards, though.
It's always a lot of the time, majority of the time, it's respect afterwards.
Yeah.
Even Muhammad Ali, the biggest shit talker.
Yeah.
But he backed it up.
He did.
Right.
He did.
So, I feel like it's different from basketball and fighting.
Yeah.
Because in the culture of fighting and the culture of that. There is the build up to the fight. And there is the taking shots back and forth and like, oh, he said this. Oh, he's gonna knock him out in the first 30 seconds or whatever the case. So, but with basketball, I feel it's a little different. Where if they would talk shit, it would kind of look.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It would look weird.
You're gonna see that guy next week.
Yeah.
You're gonna play against this guy 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah,
you have a long career. You're gonna see that guy continually. There definitely are the rivalries within basketball that continually move. Like, you know, there are some famous ones, of course, but it's funny that you say that you know the GOATs are helping each other out, and I think it's a optimistic view of society now. You know, I think people maybe 20 years ago, it was really competitive, despite what industry you're in, right? Even like in society, just typical life. People didn't really want to help each other out, especially if you're in the same society, like same industry, right? People were trying to, if you're in the same business as that guy over there and he's doing well, I'm going to try to fucking shoot you down. Now, I think with our generation, I think there's media has definitely helped us out in a sense because we get to see these examples of people at the upper echelon of sports and fame, and they're all helping each other out. I think we're starting to see that now. I think we really are, right? Like I think within friend groups, we're starting to see it. Although people can be toxic, but I think people are really trying to help each other out. Like even my industry, I mean, it's amazing. Like the car industry used to be it was a bunch of fuckery back in the day from the stories I heard. Even when I was early, like in 2014, when I just joined the car industry, it was very cutthroat. Whereas now, and tough times make tougher people, and they make people appreciate one another more. I love dealing with other dealers. Like I love selling cars to guys that are gonna sell. Yeah, across the street we'll sell the GMC dealer a bunch of trucks, knowing damn well that they're taking some of our customers. But hey, that's their customer. He's my customer now too. And it's like you can make $1, I can make $1, and we can work together. And hey, if you have a vehicle that perhaps I don't have that one of my customer wants, it's gonna be reciprocal. And that's what's happening now. And it's really cool to see, and it makes work so much funner. It's just building different relationships with different people in the same industry, knowing damn well we're competing with one another, but we're out for the same goal. And you have to make sure you align yourself with the proper people, right? You can't walk into it blindly. You can't just show up and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna help you if you help me."
Yeah,
it's kind of like once the ego's there and stuff, it'll become toxic. Yeah. But once you find the right people, and there's a lot of them. But it really takes looking. Most people do not want to look, right? They just want to fucking hide until somebody finds them. Like, bitch, we're not playing hide and seek. Like, come out of the closet, motherfucker. Right? Like, what do you...
Yeah.
So it's like people are always trying to find somebody to find them or discover them. And they live in, like, sorrow, right? They're like, people don't know my talent. It's like, because you haven't showcased it. You haven't went and sought out those opportunities or those relationships.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I also think there's another side to it too, is that you still gotta put in the work, and you still gotta be fucking cutthroat with how you work.
You have to,
right?
Yeah.
And so even like the characters that we're bringing up, and Kobe's obviously the main topic of this conversation, but a lot of people see how he works, and the teammates that he was an asshole.
Yeah.
He was an asshole on the court. When he was on there, he was there to work and there to outwork you.
Yeah.
And there to elevate everyone else. And if you couldn't get to his level or even work at that level, he would, there would be this certain kind of asshole-like mentality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily the portrayal of him everyday life. It's just a matter of when he's in what he needs to do, it's go time.
You gotta win.
The lights are on.
Yeah.
Right? It's time to go. Even in practices, and it's like there is no fucking around here.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like with us and what we're doing, I'm trying to take that same approach with everything. The podcast, the work that I do. Is when I'm there and I'm present and it's time to put in work, I'm cutthroat about it.
You got to be serious.
I have to be. And I've had many conflicts with Kenny over the past year that I've come off as asshole-ish.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, like I've had to put my foot down and be like, no, man, like has to be done.
Yeah.
We said we were going to do XYZ. We have to do XYZ. I don't care if it's a podcast that we're doing part-time, you know what I mean?
Despite the conflict, though, you guys always seem to come to a resolution, and that's a formidable relationship there, right? That's what's important.
Yeah.
You guys can work together.
And again, there's no hate.
No.
Right? There's no, I might be a dick for telling you what to do or how we should run things or how to get to that next level or do XYZ when you are busy, when you have 7, 8, 9, 10 things on your plate already, and I'm saying, yo, like you forgot this, I might come off as an asshole, but I'm trying to elevate us.
Yeah.
And luckily for Kenny and luckily in our inner circle, everyone can see that. Like we're not one of those people who are like, if I tell you something, I'm like, yo, Danny, like this is something I noticed and observed. I think you could do better in this.
You'll never see me again.
Yeah. All right. Let's cut it off. Never mind.
Do not criticize me.
Yeah.
Just playing.
No, totally, bro. But yeah,
people like that are the worst, hey?
No, it's just it's. But yeah, you have to be cutthroat, asshole, the Mamba mentality, right? That's what it is. It
came from MJ.
Yeah.
He was like the epitome of projecting, just if you're not serious, if you don't show up with my ferocity at practice, I'm going to bully you. I'm going to belittle you. And I'm not saying that's good. It's definitely not good to do that. I mean, there's ways of giving constructive criticism. That's probably not the most ideal way, but MJ really thrived with that character. And at the same time, it was his demise. Just reading his book and the amount of relationships that he had lost because of the way he acted. And it's funny because at the end of the book, they kind of reflected on his retirement speech. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was good, but media thought that he was being narcissistic, and he was talking about negative things throughout that 30-minute speech. He was talking about his high school coach, how he got cut from the senior team in grade 10. And he didn't thank his high school coach. He's like, I hated you for that. I wanted to prove to you that I was better than everybody on that varsity team. But at the end of the day, the coach did that so he got more playing time, so he could develop his craft, right? He's on the junior squad, scoring 28, 30 points a game, whereas on the varsity squad, he probably wouldn't have played much. So he probably wouldn't have developed his craft as fast enough. And then the next point was Dean Smith, his college coach, left him out, Sports Illustrated. So I guess at the time, Sports Illustrated did a kind of a series on them, and the starters were on the front page. And I think Jordan was a rookie, or he might have been a sophomore at that time. And Dean Smith, his coach, said, "No, you're not a starter." And then he'd mentioned that, kind of in disrespectful regard from what people thought. And then it was the next phase in his career, right? It was when the GM Jack Krause didn't respect him. And so he mentions all of these pivotal moments in his life that drove him to win and drove him to prove people wrong. People looked at that like, you serious, Jordan? This is what you have to talk about when when you're at the Hall of Fame ballot, when you're getting inducted to the greatest place in sports history. And then I watched it and I'm like, this is what got him here. I mean, this is amazing. He's literally just throwing it out. He's being himself. He doesn't care. You make him feel bad, he's going to prove you wrong. And that is an attitude that people should have. People are way too overly sensitive, right?
Yeah, people are soft, bro.
People are so soft,
Very,
man.
very
They don't
soft.
callous their mind. They retreat.
Shout out to David Goggins.
David Goggins. Shout out to David.
Man, I love the guy.
Amazing, but I mean, his concepts are true, and I mean, it's the proof is definitely in the pudding.
Man, but that's the thing is you have to be able to take the shit. You have to be able to have that cutthroat mentality when you're doing what you need to do to get to that next level. And doesn't mean you can't be a good person, right? Doesn't mean you can't, like, when you're out and about, doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. But I truly feel like you have to be a little bit almost like a tyrant when you're doing your work.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only way. And another point I'll bring out too is you have to be, you have to convince yourself that you are the greatest.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going and we're climbing this ladder of success and goals and whatever it is, there is the pinnacle that you look at.
Yeah.
And when you're climbing that ladder, and I'm sure with anyone, a KB, climbing up that ladder, me climbing up that ladder, you climbing up the ladder, you can't set the bar to where you can achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's up there, and I am going to get that, and I will get that, and I am that.
Yeah.
Right? Now, and sometimes you got to express it.
Yeah.
It might come out. You'll see sometimes LeBron or Kobe and something. You'll see a little bit, even in some interviews sometimes, it'll come out.
Yeah.
Where they might say, I'm the GOAT, or I'm the greatest player on the planet right now.
Yeah.
But that's the mentality that has convinced, that has brought that to light and being able to get to that.
It's manifested that.
It's manifesting that, right?
Yeah.
And again, a lot of normal people will see that as cocky. Normal people will see that as, man, what the fuck? What?
I like that.
Right? What?
Yeah.
How could you say that? You're not the greatest.
Yeah.
How could you say that? But for people that know when they're climbing that ladder of goals, you have to tell yourself, I rap. I rap.
Yeah.
I always tell myself I'm one of the greatest. Before I perform, and last year I performed in front of 400 people in LA. And that was one of the most craziest things, because I was so nervous, and all I could tell myself all day, I had anxiety the entire day. I've never done that in my life, but I was like, I'm the greatest rapper alive right now. I am the greatest. I'm going to go there and fucking kill it.
And you killed it. I saw the video.
Thank you, bro. But that was the mentality. Not saying that I am.
Yeah.
Definitely not, very far away from that. But convincing myself that, you know what? There is that pinnacle there, and I'm going to get it one day.
You got to have a conversation with Nas if you're claiming greatest ever.
Straight.
Tupac's not here, but
Tupac
and Biggie, but
but it's
we'll
the
bring out
mentality.
Nas.
It's the convincing yourself, because you'll never get out of that your shell. You'll never get out of that. You'll never get out of that spot that you are if you don't tell yourself these things. And you might come off as cocky. You might come off as, oh, man, you're a cocky prick. You're way too overconfident, right? But you have to do those things, I feel like.
I 100% agree with you. And another point is when you're really trying to embody being the greatest, you might have a baseline of somebody that's within that same niche or category that is the greatest, or is perhaps subjectively considered the greatest. But at the end of the day, you're not necessarily competing against that guy. You're telling yourself you're the greatest because you're setting such a high expectation internally. It's an internal competition. So you have haters be like, you're not the greatest. Those people are shallow because they really don't understand what this person is doing. He's manifesting his own self, his greatest version of himself, not this external position of, I'm the best and you guys are beneath me. He's doing this because he's got a fire. People have fire in their heart, in their brain, and you're trying to just reach a better place for yourself. You want to get to a better place of you. Not necessarily looking at the greatest basketball player. That's a good baseline to have, right? If that's your sport. Or not necessarily, like, you don't look in the mirror and be like, I'm coming for you, Nos, right? You don't think that.
Yeah,
you think of yourself as the greatest, and people will give you motivation. You might even take something that Tupac did or Nas did or something, that Eminem did, and then make it your own. And that's how people get to the position of being the greatest, right? And you're the greatest if you think you are, but you have to actually prove it too at the same time. So
absolutely. There's Will Smith had this thing. He was on an interview. Those post interviews of like after they have the movies, like Bad Boys, like like they go on to all these shows and they talk about the movie, but whatnot. And Will Smith was on one of them. I saw a clip of one of them, and he was talking about this stuff, and he said that in his career, I'm phrasing it in the way that I remember, but he said, you have to hold yourself and you have to believe in this crazy dream and you have to showcase that and you have to walk like this and have that swagger so that when you're around people, motherfuckers be like, yo, like, that's, you know what? He's a little crazy, but I believe him.
yeah,
He's a little crazy, but I believe him because you carry yourself. You almost convince the people and the people around you that you are going to get to that point, right? But if you hold yourself at a low standard and you're like, I am striving, like I might make it, right? Like that's not, and he says that helped him out in his career.
Yeah.
Going through being an actor is he held himself at that level where, and everywhere he walked in a room, in every room he walked, he was carrying that.
Yeah.
Right. So
just beyond life.
Yeah.
Where he was probably trying to convince himself.
Exactly.
And then finally people were convinced and he didn't have to convince himself anymore. He was just himself at that point. Yeah, no, that's I like that.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I think that's it, baby.
I think that is, man. We are closing in on an hour, bro. I think this was a very good conversation. I really enjoyed it, bro.
That was amazing.
Yeah, and I hope that the listeners, people that watch this, I hope they can take away some of the things that these icons do and the traits that we talked about. You have to tell yourself that you are the greatest, and you have to carry yourself to a certain standard. And depending on what you're doing, you got to go out and crush it and not hold yourself to. Sometimes you just got to dream crazy and lift that bar, and then the universe, kind of the law of, attraction, manifestation, somehow, some way, like you kind of end up where you're supposed to be.
That's a beautiful way to sum it up. And one last time, Mamba out.